You're about to listen to one of my favorite presentations that I've done hitherto. This is what I spoke about on the night of Shavuos last week. And on Sunday, I did it with my class. But unlike almost all of my podcasts, this one, it really helps to have a visual aid. So on Sunday, when I did the class, I did it with a slideshow. Actually, on Shavuos, I always had a slideshow. I just printed out all the slides on paper and I kind of went through them paper by paper. So I'm going to share the podcast here, but if you want to see the accompanying slides, send me an email, rabbiwolbe@gmail.com, and I'm happy to send you the slides so you could follow along and get more of a sense of some of the important visuals that will enhance the podcast. I will say that I did do a version of this podcast many years ago on the Parsha podcast, but not only has it been a few years, but also I added a bunch of new elements to the podcast, or to the presentation. So I think it's worthwhile to hear it again, even if you have heard it on the Parsha podcast several years ago. So if you want to see those slides, send me an email, rabbiwolbe@gmail.com. On the festival of Shavuos, we mark the anniversary of the revelation at Sinai. This is the most significant event in all of human history. The Almighty tore open the heavens and appeared to the Jewish people. 600,000, at least adult men, plus women, children. And the nation was catapulted to a level of prophecy. They experienced prophecy and they witnessed prophecy and they heard directly from God the Ten Commandments. And it's important to stress that you got to read the book and not watch the movie. In the movie, it seems to portray God telling the Ten Commandments just to Moshe. But the truth is that God told, and you read the Torah is explicit about that, God told the Ten Commandments to the entire nation. Everyone heard it, an experience unrivaled and unmatched by anything else in all of human history. And the nation lived to tell the tale. And on Shavuos, we revisit this festival and we once again try to re-simulate the experience that our nation experienced 3,336 years ago. And I want to begin by looking at the fourth commandment of the Ten Commandments. This is a commandment that talks about Shabbos. Of course, the first one is Anochi, believe in God, don't do idolatry, don't take God's name in vain. And then we have the fourth one, Zachar es Yom HaShabbos L'Kadsho. Remember the day of Shabbos to sanctify it. And you'll see, it says over here, that's from Exodus. I don't know if you can see my mouse, but that's from Exodus, chapter 20, verse 8. Chapter 20 in Exodus is the Ten Commandments. And in verse 8, it has the commandment number 4, and that is to remember the day of Shabbos to sanctify it. Now, if you read through the whole Torah, you will discover that there are two places in the Torah where the Ten Commandments are enumerated. Of course, in chapter 20 of Exodus, you have the Ten Commandments. Jewish people, they're at Sinai, and they experience the Ten Commandments. At the end of the 40 years, a month before Moshe is about to pass, Moshe goes through a lot of the history of what the nation endured and experienced over the preceding 40 years. And amongst the stories and the narratives and the experiences that he recounts are the Ten Commandments. And that's in chapter 5 of Deuteronomy, of Devarim. And the commentaries all notice that when Moshe enumerates, when he describes commandment number 4, to remember the Shabbos, he does not say, Zachar es Yom HaShabbos L'Kadsho, remember the day of Shabbos to sanctify it. Instead, he says a different word, Shamor es Yom HaShabbos L'Kadsho, observe, guard the day of Shabbos to sanctify it. And this is a big question. Why is Moshe saying something different? In the original rendition of the Ten Commandments, it said, Zachar, remember the day of Shabbos to sanctify it. And now Moshe is retelling it, and he seems to alter it by offering a different word, shamar instead of zachar, observe, guard instead of remember. And of course, this is the question that everyone asks. And in fact, if you look at the Rashi commentary, both in Exodus chapter 20 and in Devarim chapter 5, Rashi both times asks the question, wait a minute, why is there a switch? Why did in one place it say zachar, remember, and one place it says shamar, observe? Why is there a change? That's the question that Rashi asks, and in both places he gives the same answer. He says that zachar and shamar were said together. This was a prophetic experience, and therefore we cannot really fathom what it was like. But one of the hallmarks of a prophetic experience is that you're able to experience things on a dimension that is not otherwise humanly possible. And one of the things that they experienced, Rashi tells us, is the word zachar and the word shamar. They heard it together. It was said at once, and they heard it together. Normally, you can only say one word at a time. That's how we speak. You say one word, and it's not the other word. However, at Sinai, by the revelation, there was this difference, this transcendental experience, zachar v'shamar b'dibur echad namru. There was said in one word. Humans can't say that unless you're experiencing prophecy. You can't even hear that. But the nation was experiencing prophecy, and they heard zachar and shamar at once. That's what Rashi tells us both in Exodus 20 and in Devarim, Deuteronomy chapter 5 in Parshas Va'eschanan. And here's the question. We know that our nation's relationship with the Ten Commandments was more than just the experience of hearing them. We also received a set of tablets upon which God etched the Ten Commandments. Now, the truth is we got the tablets twice, because the first time we got the tablets, when Moshe brought them down after 40 days of being in heaven, he witnessed the nation sinning with the golden calf. So he took the tablets and he shattered them at the foot of the mountain. So those heavenly tablets were reduced to a bit of chopped up stone. And then, we'll read about this in chapter 33, 34 of Exodus, Hashem invited Moshe back up again and says, we're going to do this a second time. He once again gave us a second set of tablets. These ones were not destroyed, and these ones again had etched upon him by the finger of God, so to speak, the 10 Commandments. Now, both sets of tablets, both the first ones that were shattered and the second ones that were not shattered, were placed in the ark, and we believe they are still extant somewhere in the ark in a very safe location. But what did it say in the tablets for commandment number 4? In the original rendition of the Ten Commandments, they heard Zachar and Shamar together. But in the actual tablets, what did it say? Did it say Zachar, remember, as we find in Exodus chapter 20, or did it say Shamar, as we find in Devarim chapter 5? Which one was it? Now, some people might think that the Jewish people got the tablets twice. If we hear the Ten Commandments twice, and we get the tablets twice, well, maybe just as in the Torah, the Ten Commandments are said twice, and the first time it says Zachar, and the second time it says Shamar, maybe in the tablets as well, it was the same thing. The first tablet said Zachar, and the second tablet says Shamar. That's a very clever answer, but it's wrong, because the verse explicitly says that the text on the tablets was identical. The first and second tablets were identical in words, and therefore we have to answer the question, what did it say on the tablets? This is the question that we're going to get started with, and we'll get to it sometime soon as we proceed. Okay, let's go to the next slide here. Okay, so to try to answer the question, we're going to go in a very interesting direction, and we're going to start with the concept of 600,000. That's a number that appears in many, many, many different places in the Torah. When the Jewish people left Egypt, the verse tells us in Exodus chapter 12 that the Jewish people, when they left Egypt, there were about 600,000 people. And then there was a census at the beginning of the book of Numbers, and there's a census at the end of the book of Numbers, and in both times there are about 600,000 people. And then in the middle of the book of Numbers, Moshe, again, when he talks about the population, actually, it's this week's parasha, Parshas Behaloscha, Moshe talks about the population, there's around 600,000 people here. This number appears in many different places when talking about our nation. And the Kabbalists tell us that there's only 600,000 souls for the Jewish people. You could have 100 billion Jews, but there's only 600,000 souls. And the reason for that is because you don't need a full soul to provide life to a body. So you could have 100 billion bodies with only a finite amount of souls, because every soul is effectively infinitely divisible, and you could have just one little spark of a soul, and that could provide life and vitality to a body. So our nation, we have a total of 600,000 souls. That's what we're told by the Kabbalists. And they tell us something else which is very interesting. They tell us that the Torah, the Torah scroll that we have, if you count the letters, you will discover that it has 600,000 letters in the Torah. And the reason why is because our nation, the nation of Israel, Yisrael, so you see over here on the screen, Yisrael, it stands for Yesh Shishim Ribui Osios La Torah. There are 600,000 letters in the Torah. So the first, Yisrael is an acronym, that there are 600,000 letters in the Torah. And the reason for this is because there are 600,000 souls. Each soul has a corresponding letter. And thus, the nation in its entirety mirrors the Torah in that both have 600,000. Not only that, each soul corresponds to a different letter. That is what we're told in the Kabbalistic literature. It's featured in the Zohar. It's featured in many, many other places. Accordingly, we understand that the Sinai experience, that we're told that there were 600,000 people, 600,000 souls present at Sinai. And our sages tell us that everyone was very eager and excited and united in pursuit of this dream to get the Torah. They were like one man with one heart. All 600,000 souls were ready to experience the Sinai revelation and to accept the Torah. What that means is, or the deeper message behind that is, that every soul corresponds to a letter in the Torah. And if we want the Torah, we can't get an incomplete Torah. It's either all or nothing. So every soul had to kind of desire and draw down its corresponding letter. And because all 600,000 were united in pursuit of this, therefore we're able to get the whole Torah. If one person was opting out, we wouldn't be able to get the Torah because we can't get a half a Torah. And the only way to get the Torah is by every soul kind of drawing down and pulling down its corresponding letter. All 600,000 souls were on board, and thus we were able to get the whole Torah, comprising 600,000 letters. That's what our sages tell us. And that means, on one hand, that all of us together as a collective, the whole nation together as a collective, we're able to match and to mirror the Torah, because 600,000 to 600,000, but also every letter is different, and thus every soul is different. And if we want to figure out what our mission in life is, what Hashem wants of us, what we were created to do, in effect, we're asking the question, which letter of the Torah encapsulates and captures our soul? And that's the symbolism, so to speak, of what we need to contribute, what we as an individual represent. This is a big idea that we're told that there are 600,000 letters in the Torah, and there are 600,000 souls, and every soul has its corresponding letter. And when the nation is complete, like they were at Sinai, we're able to have this experience of the giving of the Torah. All 600,000 souls were eager to accept the concept of the Torah, and thus we're able to receive it, and we're able to enjoy it because the 600,000 souls were all on board. That's an idea that we discover and we see in many different sources. But how many letters are actually in the Torah? This is the major question that bothers everyone. The Zohar says explicitly that there are 600,000 letters in the Torah. And the sages, they cite it many, many times. There are 600,000 letters in the Torah. And there's no ambiguity about it. But if you actually painstakingly count the letters, you will discover a very different number, 304,805. It's almost, just a little more than 50%. Where are the missing letters? You're missing 295,195 letters. It's almost like the sages are trying to pull a fast one. They are pretending, it seems, that there are many more letters than there actually are. If you count every single Torah scroll will have the exact same number of letters. It's all 304,805 letters. And yet our sages tell us that there are 600,000 letters in the Torah. That's a major, major, major question. And there aren't any simple answers. But I want to ask a more minor question. This verse that you see on your screen, this verse is found in chapter 26 of Vayikra, of Leviticus. And it's talking about the aftermath of the curses, of the admonition of Leviticus. And the verse ends with a bit of comforting news. God says, V'zacharti es brisi Yaakov. I will remember my covenant with Jacob, Va'af es brisi Yitzchak, and also my covenant with Isaac, Va'af es brisi Avraham eskar v'aretz estar, and also my covenant with Abraham I will remember, and the land I will remember. And if you look at this verse, and the word that I have bolded over here is the word Yaakov. So Yaakov, of course, is Jacob. Now, this word is spelled differently than the way it's spelled everywhere else in the Torah. The word Yaakov appears hundreds of times in the Torah. Every single time, with the exception of this verse, the word Yaakov is spelled Yud, Ayin, Kuf, Vez. 4 letters. Yud, Ayin, Kuf, Vez. In this verse, chapter 26, verse 42 of Leviticus, it's the one place in the whole Torah where the word Yaakov is spelled with 5 letters. There's a letter Vav that's added between the Kuf and the Vez. Yud, Ayin, Kuf, Vav, Vez. And Rashi, of course, asked the question, why is Yaakov misspelled, or apparently misspelled? And his answer is that this Vav actually does not originate in the name of Jacob. It comes from someone else. It originates in the name of Elijah, Eliyahu, Elijah the prophet. Elijah the prophet, the word is spelled Aleph, Lamed, Yud, Hey, Vav, Eliyahu. But in scripture, sometimes the word Eliyahu is spelled Eliyah without the Vav. And Rashi explains that Jacob took the letter Vav as a collateral from Elijah, because Elijah has an important job, an important responsibility to come herald the arrival of Messiah. And Jacob wanted to ensure that Elijah would have a lot of motivation to do it. And therefore, he took a letter Vav from the name of Elijah and assimilated it within himself, the letter Yaakov with a Vav. And he told Elijah, I'm only going to give you the letter Vav if you do your job. If you come and herald the arrival of Messiah. According to this, again, this is featured in Rashi, but it's really from the Talmud, from the Midrash. When Messiah comes, this verse, chapter 26, verse 42, will be spelled differently than the way it's spelled today, because the word Yaakov will no longer have the extra Vav. So that means in the times of Messiah, we're going to lose one letter, the letter Vav of this word. So even if we do have 600,000 letters in the Torah, we're going to have one fewer in the times of Messiah. Why? Because this letter Vav is going to go away. Jacob is going to give it back to Elijah. So how do we understand the fact that even if we could find a way that there are 600,000 letters in the Torah, how can we reconcile the fact that one of the letters will disappear in the times of Messiah? That's a minor question. Major question is, there are 295,000 letters missing, and minor question is, we're missing one letter in times of Messiah. How do we reconcile that? Okay, so back to the original question. There are a variety of different answers that are given to try to find the 295 missing letters. One answer looks at the white spaces. We know that the Torah previously existed in heaven as black fire atop of white fire. That's the ink on top of the parchment. Black fire on top of white fire. If so, that means that the white space, the white parchment upon which you write a Torah scroll, that is perhaps part of the Torah. And maybe, just maybe, on some level, on some dimension, the white space constitutes letters of sorts. It's letters that we cannot see or read or understand. But maybe the white spaces, the white parchment, that serves as the way to discover the missing 295,000 letters. That's one answer. It's not very persuasive. A second answer looks at the Targum, the translation of Onkelos. Maybe that's how you make up the missing letters. The problem is that that's a lot more than 295,000 letters. Another answer says, well, with the Torah, you consume it in two ways. You read it and you pronounce it. And maybe that's how you double, so to speak, the letters by saying we're counting each letter twice because we're not only reading it, but we're also pronouncing it. And there are other theories that have been posited by some of the early commentaries who were puzzled by this mismatch, by this inaccurate figure of 600,000 letters in the Torah, whereas we only find 304,805. Those are some of the answers. But here's another idea. If you look on the screen, you'll see 5 different letters. You see an Aleph, and then a Tzadik, and then a Yud, and then a Vav, and then a Nun. Random letters. There's a very ancient concept that's featured, really, it's already in the Talmud. And that's the idea that some letters are made up of other letters. Some letters are composite letters. So, for example, you look at the letter Aleph to the right of the screen. If you just map it out, it looks like a diagonal Vav, like a straight line. And then on top of the Vav, there is a Yud. And then above on the Vav, there is a Yud. So you take a Vav, you put it horizontally, and then you put a Yud on top and Yud on bottom, and that's how you make an Aleph. That's the concept that we see in the sages. It's really featured in the Talmud, as we mentioned. And what that means is that certain letters are actually made up of other letters. So the letter Yud, letter Vav are not made up of any letters. But the letter Aleph is made up of a Vav and 2 Yuds. Similarly, the letter Tzadik, which is the second letter from the right on your screen, the letter Tzadik, the Gemara says that the letter Tzadik is actually a composite of 2 different letters. It's a letter Nun, which is the letter all the way to the left, but it's a crouching Nun. It's bent down. And on top of the Nun, there's a Yud, which is the middle letter. And the commentaries already tell us that the letter Tzadik, it's a letter Tzadik, but the name for the letter Tzadik is the same name as a righteous person. A righteous person is someone who crouches down and allows others to climb on their back. Someone who cares for others, someone who is empathetic to others, someone who bears the burden with others. That's a Tzadik. And that's why the name for this letter is a Tzadik, because it's a crouching Nun upon which you have the letter Yud. Now, I don't have on my screen here the letter Ches. But the letter Ches, if you see the way the Ches is made in the Torah scroll, we think of the letter Ches as 3 lines. This is a letter Ches. Here, I'll hold up on my screen here. We think of this as letter Ches. But the way the letter Ches is actually made in the Torah scroll, it looks like this, which is 2 Zions that that are attached by a little roof on top. That's what a letter ches looks like in the Torah scroll. Again, the same concept. You have zayin plus a zayin equals a ches. Okay, so let's continue. Let's see what we learn from this. So, if the aleph is made up of a yud, and a vav, then on some level, the math looks like this. The aleph, it's only one letter. But if you calculate the composite letters, it's three, because it's got a yud, and then a vav, and then a yud. And similarly, the letter tzaddik, we said is a crouching nun, and it has a yud on top of the crouching nun. Accordingly, on the composite letter calculation system, the letter tzaddik equals 2, because it's made up of 2. Okay, so what do we have to do now? Now we have to figure out this. How many times the letter aleph appear in the Torah? The letter aleph appears 27,057 times in the Torah. And the letter beis is 16,344. And letter gimel is 2109. The letter dalet is 7,032, and so on. This is the frequency of the appearance of letters in the Torah. If you add up all these totals, you'll arrive at 304,805 letters. But suppose we're calculating it on the composite letter scale. When the aleph equals 3 and the tzaddik equals 2, and the yud we said is made up of only 1 because there's no composite letters by the yud, and the vav is only 1, and the ches is 2, and so on, then it looks like this. You see, the aleph, it's 27,057 instances, but each one of them is comprised of 3 different letters. So if you tally the full total of the letter aleph in the Torah on the composite level, you arrive at 81,171, which is 27,057 times 3. And the beis, well, the beis is like a resh, and then under it is a horizontal vav. Well, that means it's 16,344. That's the amount of bases you have in the Torah. But times 2 on the composite letter, it's 32,688, and so on. A gimel is a vav plus a yud attached to the vav. And therefore the 2109 equals 4218 on the composite level. And so on. I'm not going to go through each one of them, but you have this example. Now, if you tally all this up together, and you want to find the amount of letters in the Torah, not just the individual letters, but the letters that make up the letters, the composite letters, the number is this, 599,990. Now, we could just stop here and call it a day. Because, if our sages tell us that there are 600,000 letters in the Torah, and the number that we come up with is 599,990, it's within the margin of error, right? We could say it's close enough. It's close enough. My goodness, we're going to be such a stickler. If you're 10 off, that's enough. That's negligible enough. That's what we would say. But of course, that's not how the Torah works. Torah is 1,000,000,000% precise. There's no precision in our world that matches that of the Torah. So it cannot be that the number is just a ballpark figure. But there are no more letters in the Torah. There are no more letters in the Torah. So that requires us to be a little creative. So we could say, well, maybe it's the 10 Commandments. Because there were special commandments, maybe somehow that makes up the 10 missing letters. That's one idea. I don't find it persuasive because I don't see that in the Torah scroll. I look at the Torah scroll, there's nothing about the 10 Commandments that stands out. But you know what I do see in the Torah scroll? Dots. Do you know what we're talking about with the dots? If you open up a Torah scroll, you will find, in addition to letters, you will find dots above and below certain letters. How many dots will you find? So this is the full tally of all the times that there are dots in the Torah. This is featured in the Midrash. It collects all the times. Okay, Genesis chapter 16, verse 5. There is one dot on top of the letter Yud. In Genesis 16, verse 18, you find 3 dots on top of the letter Aleph, Yud, Vav, and so on. In all these 10 places, you will find dots. Sometimes it's 1 dot, sometimes it's multiple dots, but there are only 10 instances in the Torah where there are dots. But again, you will find this in every single Torah scroll. You will find in these 10 locations, you will find dots above or below the letter. The last one you'll find, which is number 10 on the screen, in Devarim, Deuteronomy chapter 29, verse 28. Hanistaros la Hashem Elokeinu v'haniglos lanu ulevanenu ad. So you'll find 11 dots on top of the letters for lanu, ulevanenu, and the ayin for ad olam. And again, if you find a Torah scroll that does not have these dots, this is not a valid Torah scroll. It must have these dots. And you'll find it again in every single Torah scroll. You look at the Torah scrolls that they found 2,000 years ago from Qumran in the Dead Sea Scrolls, it will have the exact same dots. So maybe, just maybe, this is the final letters. It's not full letters, of course, because it's just dots, but it is found in every single Torah scroll. As such, we could perhaps have an answer that there are 600,000 letters in the Torah. 10 of them are these unusual forms of letters. They are found in the Torah scroll, but they are a bit unusual because they're not letters the way we think of letters. There are dots above and below the letters. Maybe that is the missing answer. That's one suggestion. Here's a second suggestion. This is a picture of a Torah scroll, and the one on the top right in your screen is a very famous part of the Torah because it's the very beginning of the Torah. Bereshis, bara Elokim es hashamayim ve'es haaretz. That's what it looks like on the Torah scroll. Can you see my mouse, by the way? I don't know if can you see my mouse? You could see my mouse? Okay, so by the way, here I said the letter ches, 2 zayins with a roof growing up top of it. Here's examples. The yom echad. See that it's a zayin and a zayin and the ches. I will tell you, by the way, that this is not the most pristine looking Torah scroll. I just found it on the internet. So it's actually not that beautiful, but it'll do for our purposes. That's a ches. And again, this is our aleph, the vav, and then yod on top, yod on bottom, and so on. But you notice that the word bereshis has a letter that is larger than the other letters. It's a large letter. In every single Torah scroll, the letter Beis, or Bet, for Bereshis, will always be a larger font. Why? Because that's the way it was. Since we got the Torah at Sinai, there are some letters that are large and some letters that are small. What's an example of a small letter? So if you look over here on the other citation, this is from chapter 5 of Genesis. I'm sorry, chapter 2, I believe, of Genesis. The letter Hey over here, Bihi Baram. That letter Hey is always small. Always. Every Torah scroll. The word Vayikra, which is the first word of the book of Vayikra, first word of Parshas Vayikra. The Aleph of Vayikra is small. So we have unusual letters, big letters and small letters. How many big letters are there in the Torah? Does anyone know the answer? Most people don't know the answer. But I will show you every single instance that there are large letters in the Torah. I collected it here for you. We have Genesis 1:1. We have Exodus 34. Exodus 34 again. Leviticus 11. Leviticus 13. Numbers 14. Numbers 27. Deuteronomy 6. Deuteronomy 29. And Deuteronomy 32. These are all the instances of large letters in the Torah. And you'll see when I printed them out, when I wrote them down on the screen, you see which letter is actually the largest letter. So we have the Beis of Bereshis, the Nun of Notzer Chesed, the Reish of Le El Acher, the Vav of Gachon, and so on. These are the instances of large letters in the Torah. Now, how many verses do we have over here that have large letters? So you count them. There's 10 verses. But it's a trick, because there's one verse that has 2 large letters. That's the verse of Shema. And again, every single Torah scroll will have the Ayin of Shema and the Dalet of Echad will all be enlarged. I want to speculate that maybe, just maybe, when the Torah gives us large letters, it's telling us you write a letter, but don't just write a letter. Write it on a bigger font. The bigness of these letters, perhaps they make up the missing letters. Meaning that there's the actual letter, the Beis Bereshis, but then there's the expansion of the letter, the augmentation of the letter, making it larger. And that in itself constitutes like another letter according to, again, the system of the Torah. If you want to make up the 600,000 letters, we're missing 10. Maybe the 10 missing ones are the large letters. Maybe, just maybe. Now, of course, the problem with that is that we actually have 11 large letters. If we have 11 large letters, we had 599,990. That gives us 600,001. It gives us an extra letter. And that's a major problem, because we talk about precision. It's got to be exactly 600,000 letters. So maybe if we have the solution of the dots, if the dots is the solution, then we don't have a problem. 10 instances of dots, each one of those instances counts as a letter, and therefore there are 600,000 letters in the Torah. If we want to go with this other solution, that the large letters, which again are featured in the Torah scroll, the large letters, they are the missing letters, that's great, but you don't have 10, you have 11. 600,001 letters. That's a problem. And here's the solution. This is a verse from Numbers chapter 25, the beginning of Parshas Pinchas. You recall the story of Pinchas. Pinchas was grandson of Aaron, who did a very heroic act. He endangered his life to stand up for God's honor. And he was amply rewarded, as we're told in the beginning of Parshas Pinchas. And the verse says, Lachein emor, therefore you should declare, God tells Moshe, declare that God, hineni nosen lo es brisi shalom, I'm going to give him my covenant of peace. Pinchas was given a covenant of peace. Pinchas was given a covenant of peace, which is a very special thing. It's an exclusive covenant between God and Pinchas. Now, if you look at this verse in a Torah scroll, you will find something that you find in no other verse in the Torah. You will find that the letter Vav of the word Shalom looks like this. There's a line bisecting the Vav. And again, I want to stress, this is found in every single Torah scroll. There's a line of white space that cuts through the letter Vav. And this is very odd, because if you cut through any other letter in the Torah scroll is invalid. If you don't cut through this letter in the Torah scroll is invalid. Every single letter of all the letters, 304,000, 805, 600,000, 599, 990, however you want to count the letters, 600,001, every other letter, it must be a complete letter. If it's chipped, if it's cracked, if there's white space, if some of the ink falls off, it is invalid. And here, this letter Vav, the word Shalom, is cut up. The Vav is bisected by this white space, this line in between it. And the Talmud asks the question, why do we have a line cutting through the Vav of the word Shalom? So the Talmud answers. The Talmud says that the reason why there's a Vav going through the word Shalom, Brisi Shalom, going back a slide here, is because you're really supposed to read it not Shalom with the Vav, but Shalem, which is how you would read the word without the Vav. Shalem means complete. So the reason why there's a strike through the letter Vav of the word Shalom, it's to tell you that you're supposed to not read the letter Vav. Don't read it as Shalom, read it as Shalem, which means complete. Because Pinchas was being elevated into a Kohen. That's this covenant of peace that God gave Pinchas. And a Kohen has to be complete. It has to be Shalem, has to be complete. If he's missing some organs, some limbs, if he's incomplete, then he's not a good Kohen. And that's why the verse says Shalom with a Vav cut up. Because you're supposed to read it on some level, you're supposed to also read it as Shalem. So if that's the case, then we have a Talmudic source that says that at least on some dimension, there's one letter that we have to not read in the Torah. We have to strike it out, so to speak, the letter Vav of the word Shalom. And therefore, according to our system, we have 599990 plus 11 minus 1. We have plus 11 because 11 large letters. Minus 1 gives us exactly 600,000 letters. And this is where it gets interesting. We started off by saying that the sign of revelation, it was about the giving of the Torah for the nation. There were 600,000. And these are all the souls of the Jewish people. And they received the Torah. Well, what does that mean they received the Torah? It means that every soul was a match to a part of the Torah. And the truth is, the only way for a person to really accept the Torah is if their essence is completely bound up to the Torah. If there were not 600,000 letters in the Torah, there could not be 600,000 souls that connect and cleave to the Torah. You have to find a part of the Torah to latch onto. And the 600,000 souls, each one found a place where they could hook themselves onto the Torah. They could bind themselves with the Torah because there was a letter of theirs in the Torah, so to speak. They had a portal, an access point to the Torah via the fact that their soul is manifested in a letter in the Torah. But we know that there are a lot of Jews that were not part of that. There were a lot of Jews who converted after Sinai. To convert, it means to simulate the Sinai experience anew. You have to find a place in the Torah to latch onto. So the non-Jews who want to become Jewish, is there a part of the Torah that's accessible to them? Is there a letter of the Torah that they can acquire, so to speak? Is there a part of can they acquire a soul that has a footprint in the Torah? This is the answer, and I'll prove it to you. The letter Vav of the word Shalom, it's cut up. So on one hand, it's not part of the 600,000, but it's still part of the Torah. This letter Vav is the capacity for non-Jews to convert. Okay, I'll prove this to you conclusively. It sounds dubious. I'm getting those looks from you. It sounds dubious. I will prove it to you absolutely conclusively. The letter Vav of the word Shalom, it's not part of the 600,000, but it is part of the Torah. And this letter is the letter that a non-Jew converts acquires. And that becomes part of their soul. That's their soul. The letter Vav. So here's my proof. Proof number 1 is from the first verse of Parshas Yisro. Yisro, Jethro. Rashi tells us he has 7 different names. He's called 7 different names in the Torah. What are the 7 names of Jethro? Reuel, Yeser, Yisro, Chovav, Chever, Keni, Putiel. And Rashi explains, based upon the Medrash, why he has these 6 names. So he says the word Yeser means to add. Yisro, Jethro, added to the Torah. Why? Because he came and says it's inefficient. Moshe, you're being overworked. Systems of 10s, of leaders of 50, leaders of 100, leaders of 1,000, and so on. That was a system that Jethro pioneered. He added to the Torah. So therefore, his name is Yeser. He added to the Torah. And then Rashi says, well, why is it called Yisro? The word Yeser and the word Yisro are the same. It starts with a Yud, a Saf, and a Resh. That's Yeser. And Yisro also starts Yud, Saf, Resh. And then there's a Vav. So Rashi says, when Yisro converted, when Jethro converted, his name Yeser, he was given a Vav. A Vav was added to his name. Kishin is Gayer. When he converted, became a Ger, Hosifulo Os Echad al Shmo. He got another letter for his name. Which letter did he get when he converted? He got the letter Vav. So here we see the concept that when someone converts, they get a letter Vav. It says it explicitly. But that's not full proof. I'm gonna prove to you that the letter Vav is this letter Vav from the word Shalom. The Talmud tells a story in the book of Avodah Zarah on page 10b. It tells a story of a council of a Roman Caesar who hated the Jews. It doesn't tell us which Caesar it was. It just tells us that there was a Caesar who hated Jews and he wanted to kill them all. And he convened a council of his advisors and he asked them what to do about these Jews. They're so irritating. They're so problematic. They're so annoying. I'm done with them. I want to destroy them. Everyone said, yeah, that's a good idea. Everyone, almost unanimous. And then there was one advisor who said, you can't do that. If you try, you'll fail. If you try, your legacy will be tarnished because you'll be the Roman emperor who killed Roman citizens. You can't do it. So the Caesar tells this advisor, Mr. Advisor, you are correct. I cannot do it. I cannot kill them. However, I can kill you because you spoke up and you defied the Caesar, and therefore I'm going to execute you. And they began taking this Roman advisor to be executed. And it was done in a public spectacle, public fashion. And people are jeering at him and heckling him. And one person heckles at him and tells him, you're a fool and a sucker. Do you know why? Because you're dying to defend the Jewish people, but you yourself, you're a Roman. You're not a Jewish person. And therefore, you're dying for some other nation. You haven't converted. You haven't paid the tax. So Talmud says, what happened? This Roman advisor snatches a knife. It's a little graphic. Apologize for that. He snatches a knife and he gives himself a circumcision and he holds up his foreskin and he says, you said I'm not part of the nation? I am part of the nation. I have now joined. That's what the Talmud says. And indeed, he was executed. And when he was executed, a prophetic voice announced, this Roman advisor is welcomed into Olam Haba, to the world to come. That's the Talmudic story in the book of Avodah Zarah on page 10b. You can read it yourself. Don't trust me. Okay, how is this at all proof to anything? Here's the proof. We have a verse in Parshas Pinchas that talks about the covenant of peace. And I told you, and again, don't trust me in anything I'm saying here today. Everything you should check yourself. Check the numbers, check the sources. This letter Vav in every single Torah scroll is cut up. It's cut up. The Talmud says it's called a Vav Ketia, a cut up Vav. Ketia. The word Shalom has a Vav that is cut up. Vav Ketia. Do you know what the name of the Roman advisor who died saving the Jewish people? His name is Ketia bar Shalom. Ketia, the son of Shalom. Now, that's not his Roman name. That's his Jewish name. Our sages are pointing to this Vav, the cut-up Vav, the Vav Ketia, from the word Shalom. And it says, he is this. He's the cut-up Vav of the word Shalom. The righteous convert who joined the Jewish nation? Where is he? Who is he? What is he in the eyes of the Torah? He's the Vav Ketia, the cut-up Vav of the word Shalom, and that's why his name is Ketia bar Shalom. Ketia from the word, son of Shalom. Ketia from the word Shalom. That's the proof that the Vav that Jethro got, and the name, the identity of this righteous convert is the Vav in the word Ketia. So how many letters are there in the Torah? There's 600,000 letters in the Torah, plus one. Plus one. Because there's 600,000 souls of the Jewish people, plus one that's available, at least for now, for non-Jews if they want to latch onto the Torah. Let's get back to Elijah. You recall way earlier, we had a problem, a small problem, with the word Yaakov, Jacob. The word Jacob, it's spelled with the letter Vav, extra letter Vav in the Torah. And in the times of Messiah, we are told that letter Vav is going to disappear. That letter Vav is going away. Why? Because that letter Vav is going to be given back to Elijah. So we ask the question, wait a minute. If there are 6,000 letters in the Torah, times of Messiah, there will be one fewer because one letter is going to disappear from the Torah because the word Yaakov will be spelled Yud Ein Kuf Vez, not Yud Ein Kuf Vav Vez. That Vav is going back to Elijah. So you're going to have one fewer letter in the Torah. You know what the answer is? The Talmud tells us that Pinchas and Elijah is the same person. Pinchas ze Eliyahu. It's the same person. The reason why there's a cut up Vav in Brisi Shalom, my covenant of peace, given to Pinchas, it's the same reason why there's an extra Vav in the name of Jacob. And I say this tell us, in the times of Messiah, this word, Shalom, this cut up Vav is going to cease being cut up. The word Shalom will be spelled Shin Lamed Vav Mem without the Vav Ketia. The Vav Ketia will cease in the times of Messiah. Today, we have 6,000 letters plus one, sort of, the letter Vav of the word Shalom, the Vav Ketia. In the times of Messiah, we're going to have exactly 600,000 letters in the Torah because this Vav will no longer be cut up. And the Vav of the word Yaakov will not be there, will be given back to Elijah. And that also means, in times of Messiah, there's no longer a portal for converts. The Talmud says explicitly, there's no conversion in times of Messiah. Why not? Do you know why not? Because the Vav Ketia ceases in the times of Messiah. There's no longer this halfway letter that allows for converts to latch on and to be like Jethro, to acquire that letter Vav, to be like Ketia Bar Shalom. It's gone. And therefore the opportunity for conversion goes with it as well. Now we asked the question at the beginning of the presentation. Remember the first question we asked, what did it say on the tablets? Did it say Zachar? Did it say Shamar? Do you see the answer? Do you see it? Once we understand that letters are made up of composite letters, in the word Shamar is the word Zachar as well. How do you spell the word Shamar? A Shin, a Mem, a Vav, and a Resh. How do you spell the word Zachar? A Zayin. Every Shin has a Zayin in it. A Chaf, a Vav, and a Resh. You could write the same words, Zachar and Shamar, together. On a composite level, every Shin has a Zayin, every Mem has a Chaf. Zachar and Shamar were written together on Luchos as well. And I ended off my talk by saying that at Sinai it was very much a national experience, but it was also an individual experience. Every soul was given its corresponding letter in the Torah. In fact, the Midrash says explicitly that every single person experienced the Sinai on their, of course, there was a collective experience that was the same, that was universal, but there's an individual experience that was different for every individual. And that's because everyone's got a different soul and everyone's got a different mission. And that mission is captured in their corresponding letter in the Torah. And also when we go through the Sinai reenactment every year, it's important for us to recommit ourselves, to renew our vows to both experiences that happen at Sinai. Both the collective experience where we're all given the mitzvahs and the Torah. We said Nasa V'Nishma, but we're all on board. We're committed to whatever Hashem wants of us. In addition, we're also responsible to find our mission, to find our letter, to find our soul and what we uniquely are required to do, what we are uniquely capable of doing, and find that mission and hopefully fulfill it to the best of our abilities.